Hello there. Welcome back in our continuing conversation about the three chambers still. And today the focus of the conversation is on vinegar production. It's something we've been wanting to do for many years, but what moved vinegar production to the front burner was a conversation I had with Noah Rothbaum, the wonderful author of the Whiskey Bible, who casually mentioned to me in a conversation that the three chamber still was used to produce vinegar before Prohibition. I, of course, didn't know this. When he told me this, I immediately wanted to see the documentation that he had. And that set me into further exploration where I learned what they were doing was they were producing eau de vies on the three chamber still. So in other words, peach brandy, pear brandy, apple brandy on the three chamber still. And the three chamber still, as you know, produces very aromatic and very oily spirits. And the thought of making a vinegar out of peach brandy or peach eau de vie produced on the chamber still was something I immediately wanted to do. And so we started the production of the vinegar just this year. So vinegar in its simplest form is acetic acid. Most of the vinegar that you've enjoyed in your life is 4 or 5% acetic acid by volume. And that's produced by feeding ethanol and a unit of oxygen to bacteria called acetobacter. The acetobacter takes 1 unit of ethanol, 1 unit of oxygen, and converts it into 1 unit of acetic acid and 1 unit of water. So this is a bioreaction that's occurring with this bacteria to convert it into vinegar. So when you're talking about different types of vinegar, what you're really discussing are the feedstocks. So for example, rice wine vinegar or white wine vinegar, you're starting with white wine, that'll be 10, 11, 12% alcohol. You're going to cut that with water down to about 5% alcohol, and you're going to feed that to the bacteria. And the bacteria is going to convert that 5% ethanol into acetic acid, into vinegar, leaving no alcohol at all. So it's alcohol-free. So in our case, we're talking about peach brandy that we've produced on our three chamber still. So as we've discussed before, the three chamber still yields a very oily, fragrant, aromatic spirit. So this is really the perfect feedstock for vinegar. So we're going to take the three chamber peach brandy. It's going to come off of the still at about 65%, so it's clear, it's unaged. We're going to immediately dilute it down to 5% alcohol. This is what we're going to feed to the bacteria, and the bacteria is going to take the alcohol and convert it into vinegar, into acetic acid. But what's going to be left are the peach aromas and the oils and the beautiful stone fruit notes that you get from that peach brandy. And that's the entire reason we're using it. It makes a very bright, effervescent vinegar that just completely jumps out of any dish that you put it in. So when looking at various methods to produce our vinegar, I was looking for something that would work in harmony with the three chamber still. The three chamber still yields a very oily, aromatic, beautiful, elegant distillate, and I wanted to make sure it preserved that character. So what I selected was the shootenbach process, so that was patented in 1823. And it's a slower, more elegant method of producing vinegar that I thought would match perfectly with the peach brandy that we're producing in the three chamber still. And the way that it works is you fill a tank with beechwood chips. And the beechwood chips are impregnated with acetobacter. And the acetobacter colonies are literally living on the wood itself. And you trickle the peach brandy on top of it, and it trickles down and mingles together with these beechwood chips slowly over time. Countercurrent to that, operating in the opposite direction, is oxygen. So you're pumping air from underneath the tank, underneath the bed of beechwood chips. So you've got the falling of the peach brandy, so that's falling down because of gravity. You've got oxygen running countercurrent to that. So the beechwood chips with the acetobacter on it is going to come in contact with the peach brandy and the ethanol that's in it. It's going to come into contact with the air that's running up from below, and it's going to produce acetic acid over several weeks' time. It's a very slow, very elegant process of producing very, very bright, effervescent vinegars that retain the properties of that peach brandy and the peach aromas and the oils that you get out of that three-chamber still. So we really thought that this was the perfect method to use to produce our vinegar. So just like the three-chamber still for rye production, the three-chamber still for vinegar production completely disappeared because it's so inefficient. If you're already making a peach cider or an apple cider and turning that into vinegar, why would you add the expensive step of distilling it into a brandy before turning it into vinegar? And the obvious answer is there's a profound difference between peach brandy and peach cider. The aromatics are completely different. The oils are completely different. It's just going to yield a different dish when you're cooking with it. But this is what Southern chefs were using in particular to make their dishes. And as I was doing more and more research, I came across basically what would be looked at now as kind of ag extension offices discussing how to handle fruits in the South. What can you make out of them? What can you make preserves? Can you make jellies? Can you make jams? And I came across the Southern Apple and Peach Culturalist, and it's adapted to the soil and climate of Maryland, Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, and further south, including portions of the West and West Virginia. This was published in 1872, and it's basically trying to help farmers and help orchardists to make better fruit, and then to figure out, okay, once you have this fruit, remember this is the 1800s, how do you preserve it? How do you turn it into something you can sell? How do you turn it into something beautiful? So a little further in, they have a section on cider vinegar, and they're talking about the presence of alcohol, brandy. They say this last requisite had not been generally known in the United States. Its importance, the alcohol, brandy, however, was discovered by Colonel Anderson of New York many years ago, and he has since been in the practice of adding some cider spirit, apple brandy, to make cider vinegar during the progress of acetic fermentation. So in other words, what he was doing is he was creating apple cider to be turned into vinegar, but he was strengthening it using apple brandy, right? So again, the feedstock is still ethanol, but obviously apple brandy is going to yield a completely different vinegar than just apple cider on its own. And when I read this was just a direct tip telling you, oh, this is what they were using to make elevated vinegar that was more aromatic, more fragrant, and would make better dishes. Another document I came across is entitled American Commercial Methods of Manufacturing Preserves, Pickles, Canned Foods, etc. The etc. in this case is vinegar, and this was produced in 1912. And this, out of all of the places, this is what Noah Rothbaum sent to me recently. And it really, ironically, has one of the best descriptions of how a three-chamber still works and has an illustration of it. And it has an illustration of a three-chamber still that's used to produce vinegar. The difference between a three-chamber still that was used to make brandy or used to make whiskey is the presence of a water tank directly off of the condenser. So in other words, the IRS was forcing you to turn this into vinegar straight off of the still in order to legally use this still to produce vinegar. As it's traveling off of that condenser and coming out as alcohol, if you just fill it into a tank, the ABV of the spirit coming off will be in about 65% alcohol. With that elevated amount, obviously you can turn that into peach brandy or apple brandy afterwards that's at a higher alcoholic concentration. If you're putting it directly in a water bath, by law, you're diluting it down to 20% ABV, at which point it can't legally be sold as brandy. And the reason that they're doing this is taxes. They're trying to make sure that these companies aren't cheating and saying, hey, we're using this to produce vinegar, but on the sly, we're going to sell this at brandy for a lot more money. So by law, you had to use a 3-chamber still in a vinegar plant with a water tank attached to the condenser. And I just thought that was utterly fascinating. And they have a really nice drawing here. In the section here under distilling, it says, at the end of this chapter will be found a synopsis of the Internal Revenue Law governing the distilling of spirits or low wines in vinegar factories. The general custom in distilling low wines for vinegar in small plants has been to use a 2 or 3-chamber wood still, and the method given below will be for a 3-chamber wood still. So again, here's direct evidence of them using 3-chamber stills to make peach and pear and apple brandy out of it. So what I have in my hand hasn't been made in over 100 years. This is 3-chamber peach brandy vinegar. And after producing it, I completely understand why producers were in love with using the 3-chamber still, because the vinegar just absolutely jumps out of the glass. You have all the aromatics from the peaches in just one bottle. It's over 6 pounds of peaches in one single bottle. And so the peaches we use to make the 3-chamber peach vinegar are harvested in Palisade, Colorado, and we've been working with Talbot's Orchards there for over a decade. And really what we're trying to do is take the orchard, not just the fruit, but the orchard, and get that into a glass. So really this is representing Colorado. Everybody knows how beautiful these peaches are, and Talbot's, in my opinion, grows the very best that Colorado has to offer. And so the result is the aromatics, you get the stone fruit, you get the peach undertones, you get vanilla, and it all just absolutely comes together to make a perfect vinegar. So I can understand why these producers loved it so much, but it disappeared because this was very inefficient. It was much more wise financially to use modern processes that produce the vinegar quickly and is made out of grain. But to me, this is really the pinnacle of vinegar production. We're just so proud we brought it back all the way from the 1800s. Cheers.